Good morning. It is Tuesday, July 14th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, the roller coaster that has been the negotiations about the Iran nuclear deal reached their final hour yet again, as the deadline has come and passed. The third deadline has come and passed in Vienna. After an intense week in marathon talks, Greece and the Eurozone have reached an agreement in bailout talks, but the Greeks themselves are not happy. And later on the show, French-Israeli singer Rif Cohen will be here to celebrate Bastille Day with us, with a little bit of music and something lighter. Good morning, I'm Yael Avi, and we begin in Vienna, where in a final overnight stretch, world powers and Iran have burned the midnight candle in an attempt to meet a third deadline for the elusive nuclear deal designed to curb the Islamist nation's nuclear aspirations in return for sanctions relief. 17 days is how long they've been sitting there. What we know thus far is that the meeting later this morning in Vienna is reportedly scheduled for within a couple of hours. A statement supposedly by Mohammad Zarif and Federica Mogherini of the EU is expected later today. Again, that is according to reports. Now, hope for the final agreement in the talks grew overnight as the United States and its 5 negotiating partners gathered shortly after midnight for an hour-long meeting after a day of alternating expectations and pessimism. Shortly before that session, the pace of the meetings raised the possibility that an agreement might be reached in the middle of the night, but we are still waiting for what appears to be the make-or-break phase in a deal that will reshape the Middle East. Now, in a reflection of the roller coaster that has characterized the negotiations in recent days, diplomats have been optimistic yesterday that a final agreement could be reached before midnight. But just before nightfall, Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Jawad Zarif, making one of his periodic appearances on the third floor of the balcony of the Coburg Palace in Vienna, Hotel Palace in Vienna, where the talks are being held, dashed those hopes. Also, the leader, President Rouhani of Iran, tweeted earlier on yesterday evening that a deal actually has been reached. That tweet then was rescinded. As we said, it has been a roller coaster, and as of this morning, we still don't know where things stand and if we're looking at a deal later on today. But to break this down and look at the sticking blocks that remain on this deal, whether imminent or not, we're joined in studio by I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. By Reshet Bet, Arab Affairs correspondent Eran Zinger.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Also by Dr. Raz Tzim from the Alliance Center for Iranian Studies at Tel Aviv University. Good morning to you. And by our one and only Haaretz Defense senior defense correspondent Amir Oren. And with such a party, let's take a look at the following report about the latest of what happened and what took place yesterday in Vienna, and break it down from there.
The biggest question of recent days has been when. When will the P5+1 and Tehran might succeed in finalizing an agreement? But exactly what will a deal include? The approximately 100-page-long agreement is, at its core, aimed at limiting Iran's ability to produce nuclear weapons, or at least extend as long as possible the time it would take to do so. According to the political framework reached last April, Iran would curb 2/3 of its uranium enrichment centrifuges, from 19,000 to 6,104 older machines. Tehran would also reduce its stockpile of low-enriched uranium from 7,154 kilograms to only 300 kilograms. The April agreement also stipulated the Islamic Republic will not build any new enrichment facilities for 15 years. The Arak heavy water reactor, which produces plutonium that can be used as fuel for a nuclear bomb, would be redesigned to no longer produce weapons-grade plutonium, focusing on peaceful research. What Iran would be able to do under the April framework is continue to enrich fuel for commercial nuclear reactors to produce electricity only. When it comes to the scope of international inspections aimed at monitoring the nuclear program, it is believed the teams have agreed on access to Iran's nuclear facilities and scientists, although Iranian leaders are still making harsh statements on this point. Another outstanding issue concerns the demand of world powers that Tehran come clean over its past activity and the possible military dimension of its nuclear program. In exchange for all this, international sanctions on Tehran, which have been suffocating the Iranian economy for years, will be lifted. The discussions have focused on the pace and method of sanctions relief, as well as the potential to snap them back if Iran is found to be violating the agreement. Last, but definitely not least, is the issue of the UN arms embargo and the ban on Iran's ballistic missile program. The Iranian negotiating team, with the support of Russia and China, have been insisting that it be lifted as part of a final deal.
Let's go straight to Vienna, where we're joined by I-24 News correspondent there, Ellie Hogenberg. Ellie, good morning to you. You've been burning the midnight candle, I suppose, with the other delegates for the past 17 days. But if you can hear me, Ellie, what are the remaining sticking blocks? What are the remaining sticking blocks of this deal that everybody in the press is saying is imminent, but we still don't know? What remains on the table? What are we expecting today? Okay, let's go back to the studio right here. Tal Shalev, if we know, what are the remaining sticking blocks of this agreement, if it is indeed imminent, if indeed we're looking at a statement coming out later today from Vienna?
Well, the past 24 hours have been more a roller coaster than the past 17 days. So the information that has been coming out of Vienna in the past hours there isn't a lot of information coming out. What we do understand that at the final stretch there were two, at least reported, main obstacles. The first one was the exact wording and phrasing of the UN Security Council resolution, and the second one had to do with translation of this very long document, a 100-page document, from English to Persian, and then to translate it back to English in order to verify that the translation is accurate. So it's last sticking points, but of course, as we've been seeing these negotiations, this talking point, this message, there's been a lot of progress, but there are two lasting sticking points. We've been hearing that talking point again and again. So I wouldn't, at this point, it looks more likely than it has in recent days, more than ever, but still I would be very cautious about waiting to see exactly what happens in the next few hours, even though it does seem that a deal is imminent.
It seems that a deal is imminent. Raz Sim, the man who lives in Israel but virtually exists in Iran, asking you yesterday this flurry of Twitters. I found it fascinating to see a leader out of Iran coming out with a tweet saying there is a deal, then rescinding the tweet. Is this, again, negotiation ploys? Is this some sort of, a spiel that we're seeing on that side? What can be gleaned from information coming out of Iran, if at all?
Iranians are already celebrating, I would say, at least in social media. Real celebration will probably take place today or tomorrow.
Right.
But it's close deal, at least from Iran. Even I would say that even the hardliners in Iran. I read Kayhan this morning. Kayhan is one of the most hardliners in Iran, and he didn't criticize the deal for the first time.
Right.
So it seems that there is a deal, and it's a matter of time. I think what happened yesterday with the tweet of Rouhani was just a technical glitch. Yeah. I know
that all of us were jumping on, because that's what we do in the
perhaps he was too enthusiastic with Netanyahu's tweet.
The if.
So.
Right, there's that as well. Eran Zinger, I want to ask you, because we had this discussion before, very quiet in the Arab media.
Too quiet. Too quiet, yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, I think the Arabs are, let's say, embarrassed of what's going on right now. That's the best phrasing or wording I can tell about the Arabs, because all the efforts, all the attempts made by the Arabs, especially by Saudi Arabia, to block this deal, to stop it, failed apparently. On the one hand, on the other hand, we should listen carefully to what the new foreign minister of Saudi Arabia, Adel Jubair, said a few days ago. He said, "We will not sit down quietly. We will do everything we can in order to confront this new situation. In other words, we will not let Iran." It's not only the nuclear deal here. It's not only the nuclear capabilities of Iran. It's the money, because once the Iranians have more money, they will have more potential power to do whatever they want to do in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, and maybe in other places.
Proxy wars that are going on right now.
Exactly.
That Iran essentially is winning in many cases.
Yes, so if they're winning right now, just imagine what could happen if they have more money and more power to do whatever they want in the Gulf, especially.
Which is something that everybody in the region is looking at, if they're of that persuasion. Haaretz's defense analyst, Amir Oren, I had a retired admiral, an Israeli retired admiral, in the studio yesterday, referring to him lovingly as Chinese, who said off camera and on camera, actually, that this is the time for Iran's, I would say, foes, be it Israel or whatnot, that if he were sitting in the Israeli government, this is the time to attack, that this is the worst thing that could have happened. Is that something the Israeli Defense Administration is looking at this morning seriously?
No, not seriously. Perhaps Prime Minister Netanyahu secretly harbors this dream, but it is not to be. And one has to take two different cuts at what's going on in Vienna. One is to separate the fireworks from substance. The fact that it's been going on for more than 2 weeks and negotiators are working throughout the night is not important. This is what happened when Kissinger had his shuttles 40, 50 days between
China and
Damascus and Jerusalem. And what's important is the substance of the agreement, and all of the rest will be remembered as dust at most. The other thing is to separate the essentials from the extras. And the extras have to do with the ballistic missiles and the offensive policy that Iran undertakes in the region and all of that. This is not part of the deal. This is not part of the equation of the sanctions relief versus stopping or cutting short the nuclear weapon effort of Iran.
Let's go straight to Vienna, where I-24 News correspondent there, Eli Hochenberg, joins us now, and hopefully technically this is working. Eli, what is expected today from the little information, as has been mentioned here, because those are very close talks? What remain the sticking points, if at all, between the delegates in those negotiations in Vienna, and what is expected today when it comes to the scheduling of the people sitting there?
Well, it's very mixed feelings this morning in Vienna, as only 3 hours ago, the hundreds of journalists covering the nuclear talks were here at the media tent, all prepared to get onto the buses and head to the UN headquarters, to the venue where the announcement should have been taking place. But everything was delayed yet again. And as Tal said, we need to be very cautious with the estimated schedule. But as for now, we are expected to see a plenary meeting taking place at around in 3.5 hours from now, and following that, the announcement by Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif and EU top diplomat Mogherini is due to take place. But, you know, befitting to this to the fierce manner of these negotiations, the bargaining continued until the very last moment, and the teams came back to the negotiating table late last night to keep on discussing the issues, namely the issue of the UN arms embargo, which has been occupying them for the last couple of days. Again, as for now, no one can really predict what will happen, but in the upcoming hours, we're expected to see, or at least to hear about certain progress, hopefully the announcement itself, and we'll of course keep you updated from here all throughout the day.
No, Eli Hochenberg, from joining us from Vienna, thank you. You're actually staying with us if in the event that something happens over the course of the next a couple of hours. White House spokesperson Josh Ernst yesterday tried to, as everybody else within these negotiations, remain slightly vague when it comes to where things stand. But this basically is the United States, I would say, you know, opinion when it comes to the talks right now. Let's have a listen to what he said overnight.
The talks continue in Vienna. The thing that I can tell you is that they have made genuine progress in those conversations. And I think even over the last week or so, there is progress, important progress that has been made. There have been some key issues in the negotiations that have been closed. And that's a good sign. That said, there continue to be some sticking points that remain unresolved. What's also true is that typically some of the most difficult issues are the ones that get kicked to the end. And that's why the president is going to resist any effort to sort of fast forward through the closing here. There continue to be significant issues that remain, and the president will not sign on to an agreement. And this is the attitude that's taken by our P5+1 partners too. They're not going to sign on to an agreement until all of our concerns have been addressed.
And apparently, you know, I think if I was trying to translate Josh Ernst, it ain't over till it's over. I mean, Owen.
Yes, but in the Israeli public discourse, you could boil down what Ernst said to one term: concessions. And Benjamin Netanyahu is always talking about American or Western concessions. While doing that, he's helping President Obama sell it to the Iranian public, because the Iranian public, and especially Iranian hardliners, would like to come out and declare victory. And if Netanyahu says that Obama conceded, that means that Zarif and Rouhani and Khamenei managed to win over the Americans. But actually, there are some non-negotiable demands here. But on the other hand, if one wants to compare what's happening at the end with the opening positions, obviously there'll be concessions all around.
Well,
this is the meaning of
negotiations. Are all about, concessions at the end of the day.
Everything. I think that we said this after the Lausanne Agreement, and it'll be viable again tomorrow or today. The devil is in the details, but it's also in selling the details. And each side here has to sell the details, including Benjamin Netanyahu, because the key to Congress support of this deal is how much does this agreement move away from the Lausanne Framework Agreement. If it moves too far away, then President Obama will have a more problematic time passing this through Congress. So after the deal is signed, each side will be on a PR offensive, selling the details of the deal. The Iranians will want to present their achievements. The U.S. will want to present how hard their achievements, but also how much they stand by the Lausanne Framework. And Netanyahu will be trying to show the American public how much the American administration actually drifted away from what it committed to Congress.
It's very interesting what's going on right now with the Israeli Prime Minister. I think he is trying to sell, in his way, the deal in 3 different markets. As you said, the American market, the other one is the Israeli one. We listened to Netanyahu yesterday. He said, we never said that we will avoid an agreement. We will avoid Iran from becoming nuclear. Yeah. This is very interesting what he's saying. In other words, we are not going anywhere. We are still there to block Iran.
On the route.
And the third market that Netanyahu referred to is the Iranian market. And I think that Dr. Tzimet is the one to answer the question of Netanyahu is now calling or speaking Persian to the people in Iran.
No, I mean, when Prime Minister Netanyahu starts, on social media referring in Persian to people that are the foes, so to speak, first of all, is that something that he can sell? And what is the notion about that in Iran? Because Iran is still touting the anti-Israeli rhetoric. That's not going to go away.
I think this Twitter account was a very good idea, but a very bad implementation.
Right.
First of all, because Netanyahu is considered by most Iranians as the enemy of Iranians, not just Iran. Because he's struggling against removing the sanctions, for instance, is considered to be very anti-Iranian. You don't have to support the Iranian regime in order to be against the sanctions. So when I looked yesterday at the reactions of Iranians, not just exiled Iranians, not just Iranian inside Iran, but also exiles, I saw most of them were anti-Netanyahu. They refer to him as an enemy, as someone who just wants to carry out his policy against Iranian people, not just against Iranian regime.
And what about the sentiments towards the United States and Iran when it comes to social media or reactions of the Iranian people?
I think there's a difference between sentiments in social media, considering the United States, which is much more positive than the reactions of Khamenei, for instance. Khamenei is concerned of these sentiments because he doesn't want the Iranian people to think that the normalization with the United States is the next step.
Is the next step, or that in any way, shape, or form McDonald's is coming in. That would be me saying that. Speaking of the United States, let's go quickly we're joined now by John Hanna of the FDD from the United States, former Security Counsel to Dick Cheney. Thank you for joining us this morning. Mr. Hanna, I'm sure that you have been following these negotiations, as everybody else around these tables. They seem to be imminent. It seems to be possibly happening today. I want to be very careful about that. Many critics to this deal, but when you look at the supporters of it, there are those who will say that just like in the event between China and the United States back in the day during the Nixon days, this is actually a route towards normalization between 2 big foes that can reshape the world and that can actually create a better space, especially in the Middle East. I'm assuming you think that is a wrong statement.
Yeah, I don't think there's any evidence for it. I do think it's a hope. It's a prayer. but it's not a real strategy or a policy. I think at the end of the day, when you cut through all of the minute negotiating details, there was a choice. Iran wanted to keep open the option of becoming a nuclear weapons state. The United States wanted to eliminate that possibility, not just now, but for forever. And I think when you look at what's coming out of this deal, Iran will have won that bet.
And we still don't know the intricate details of this deal. But when we're looking at the attempts of Iran to lift the embargo over the weapons deal, all that said, when it comes to where the Middle East is standing right now, and Mr. Hanna, because you're a senior counselor and you know this region, the notion that the Middle East, as it's breaking up apart right now, with Syria not being a state almost, with Yemen going through proxy wars, and with this battle against ISIS, many will claim that Iran is needed in order to combat ISIS. Isn't that the case while all Western powers, or also the United States, are losing the battle against that foe within the region, that it needs a big player?
Listen, if Iran was, the problem is, of course, that Iran is at the core, at the center of all of these conflicts in the Middle East. What is ISIS? ISIS is a Sunni Islamist radical reaction to Iran's creeping aggression throughout the region, in Iraq, in backing the Assad regime in Syria, the Houthis in Yemen, obviously, Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran is the power here trying to overturn the entire regional order. And I think with the American withdrawal from the region, what you're seeing is the Sunni Arab world reaching for whatever tools it can find. And unfortunately, it's primarily a jihadist tool to respond to this Iranian aggression. And I think this nuclear deal is only going to be pouring fuel on this fire, because it does essentially give international legitimacy to Iran, either sooner or later, at the most 15 years, becoming a nuclear weapons threshold state. And in the meantime, it'll get at least $150 billion, if not also the conventional weapons, to actually supercharge its terrorism and aggression throughout the Middle East.
And we're looking at statements as such, and John Hanna, I want to thank you for being with us. Hopefully you can stay a few more minutes. When we're looking at statements as such, sentiments as such, it is this big battle back at home that President Obama is going to have to face in the event this deal is signed today, or in the event this deal is signed. Is that even doable for him?
Well, the wide assumption in Washington is that it is doable, that it will be...
He can veto it, but still.
He can veto it, and it will be almost impossible to rally Democrat senators to vote against the veto. But, as we said, if the objection, the opposition to the deal succeeds to create an image that the deal moves too far away from the Lausanne Framework Agreement on some sticking points, it will be more difficult. We're talking about a few. We know who the goal is. We're talking about a few very substantial and pro-Israel Democratic senators who will be the target of a very, very intensive lobby coming out all from Israel, from the pro-Israel lobby in Washington, and of course the Republicans and the hardliners in the United States. So it's definitely going to be a challenging period. And for Obama, probably the battle just begins. It'll take a few more weeks until he knows exactly how this turns out.
And Hansinger, in the span of time, in those be it 60 days or what long would this battle diplomatically will be waged in the United States, even though there's such a silence from the so-called counterparts of the Iranians and the Arab press, what can Saudi do at this point? When they say we're going to go at it on our own, are we looking at more pressure when it comes to the proxy wars, or are we looking at something to try and completely block it physically on the ground?
The first meeting that the new king of Saudi Arabia had was with the president of Pakistan. They were discussing the nuclear capabilities of Saudi Arabia. In other words, buying nuclear capabilities from the Pakistanis, saying we don't need to have scientists. We can just give you the cash and you give us the bomb. So this was a very strong message to Iran. But it's not only the Pakistanis, it's the Russians. They are now dealing with the Saudis. They're discussing building nuclear reactors in Saudi Arabia. In other words, everything that Prime Minister Netanyahu said that might happen could happen right now. We're talking about this new race of
the proliferation of
nuclear weapons.
Arms.
Because once the Iranians will have it, the Saudis will want to have it too, and the Egyptians will actually have it also in other parts in the Gulf region. So I think that there will be no other alternative for the Saudis but to say to the Iranians, okay, if you have a bomb and we cannot do anything to stop it in Vienna, maybe we'll have other areas that we'll be able to act in.
Yeah.
The Netanyahu policy is rife with contradictions. First of all, Iran is pictured as a rational actor, liable to react to pressures. But to what pressure? Israeli military pressure? Didn't seem to react. Sanctions, which Netanyahu resisted when they were first broached some 5-6 years ago, now he wants to keep, not because they are going to influence Iranian behavior, but because of the money and the weapons purchase and all of that. Now, let history judge, but this right-wing hardline or die-hard conservative view seems to be very short-sighted. The other view that a rapprochement between Iran and the West and the moderation of the next Iranian generation, what happens after Khamenei, what happens when the Republican Guard loses some of its influence, this seems to be much more reasonable.
Much more. Finally, Ross, it seems just because you were discussing this, what happens when the guard changes, but that will be probably a battle within Iran to entrench the old guards, right? If we're looking at the deal, what can the Iranians from within that administration do to maintain and safeguard its power? I
have to say that the first process for President Rouhani is over. But now the big job is starting, because take, for example, the control of revolutionary guards over the economy in Iran. There's no doubt that the entering of Western companies into Iran will have some effect on the status of the revolutionary guards in Iran. So I think Iranians are already thinking about the post-deal era, and it will be very dangerous for them, because Rouhani stated a few days ago that he carried out his election promise to get a deal. He did, but he still has his major promise to improve the economic conditions of his citizens. This will be a much more difficult battle for him.
Difficult battle from within. All the time we have for this block, as we said, supposedly a deal imminent in Vienna between world powers and Iran. We'll take a closer look at the Israeli Prime Minister reaction to that possibly imminent deal in our next half hour. Do stay with us now, as in every morning, the news. I-24 News Morning Edition on this July, thank you, Ami Kaufman, July 14th, known as Bastille Day, and possibly the day that will reshape the Middle East, if indeed a deal will be signed over the course of the next several hours in Vienna, where all eyes around the world are looking at the delegates of the P5+1 and Iran trying to reach a deal after 17 days. Nobody's looking more closely, more likely, than the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Tal Shalev, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent. Benjamin Netanyahu, this is also a final stretch for him, isn't it?
Yeah, and we're all waiting. I told one of my friends yesterday, we're all waiting for the Netanyahu show. It's like we know what he's going to say, but we want to see exactly how he says it and what pyrotechnics he adds. And what language he uses. We've been hearing Netanyahu on a daily campaign in the past 17 days, basically trying out different messages against the deal. But Netanyahu's already prepared. He knows that this deal is a done deal from the beginning. This has been the working assumption in Israel from the beginning. So basically, he's already preparing for his next battle, and that will be trying to confront the administration on Capitol Hill.
And we have a report, your report, about Benjamin Netanyahu's battle, so to speak, when it comes to the Iran deal. Let's have a look.
If it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, it's a duck. But this duck is a nuclear duck.
It's been termed his life's mission. His supporters cite its historic meaning, but critics say sounds like a broken record.
This is a bad deal. A very, very bad deal. This is a bad deal. It's a very bad deal. Better no deal than this very bad deal.
Whatever the case, a nuclear deal between 6 world powers and Iran is one of the Israeli Prime Minister's worst nightmares, and it's coming true. Netanyahu has dedicated a crucial amount of his last 6 years in power to warning the world about the Iranian bomb. He lectured world leaders in private and public about the danger Tehran poses to the world, and succeeded in convincing the U.S. to ramp up the most impressive set of international sanctions that crippled Iran's economy. But then came Rouhani and Mohammad Javad Zarif. Unlike the previous face the Islamic Republic showed the world, the new Iranian regime conquered the globe with charm diplomacy, Twitter diplomacy, and most recently, balcony diplomacy. Seeking to fulfill their people's desire for economic relief from sanctions, Rouhani and Zarif negotiated their way to a deal, while Netanyahu and Israel were left on the sidelines.
Don't be fooled by Iran's manipulative charm offensive.
Throughout the 22 months of talks, Netanyahu relentlessly lobbied world powers to maintain a tough stand against the celebrated Iranian negotiating tactics. However, his mission to thwart the Iranian bomb suffered a severe blow following his ongoing tensions with the U.S. president. He confronted the White House instead of working with it.
His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu.
Netanyahu isn't giving up or raising a white flag and is far away from declaring a mission impossible. The coming weeks will be dedicated to his next battle on Washington's Capitol Hill. If he has his way, Congress will oppose the administration's eagerness for a deal, and the Iranian nuclear saga will be far from over.
In line with this fabulous piece by Tal Shalev about the battles that Netanyahu faced trying to prevent this Iranian deal, the Israeli Prime Minister, had the following to say overnight as the candle was burning late in Vienna. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
The forces of militant Islam are rushing to fill the void, and they are targeting some of the oldest Christian communities on earth with expulsion, forced conversion, rape, and murder. Think about that. Now imagine what these forces would do with nuclear weapons. Preventing the Islamic Republic of Iran from building nuclear weapons is the paramount challenge of our generation. This is not about partisan politics. This is about survival. This is about our future.
Isn't also, Tal Shalev, pardon me, obviously still with us in studio, isn't it also part of the Netanyahu's latest campaign to be re-elected as prime minister to promise the Israeli people that there will be no deal or that he will do his best? What is his next step now in the event there is a deal?
Well, first of all, we might say Netanyahu didn't campaign on the promise that there will be no deal. He campaigned on the promise that there will be no bomb, and yesterday he tried to stress that because he is being attacked now, actually quite surprisingly, by members of the opposition, by Isaac Herzog and Yair Lapid, who are saying that he bears personal responsibility for the fact that this deal, this bad deal, which they agree is bad, is being signed. But Netanyahu, from Netanyahu's point of view, the battle isn't over. The Iranian nuclear threat is still there, and he will continue to try and combat it in any way. He, of course, says that the military option is still on the table, but most people assume that that is not really plausible given the new international setting and the fact that there is such a historic agreement between the international community and Iran. But definitely Netanyahu is going to put a lot of efforts into the next few months in the United States. There's going to be a special task force comprised out of Israeli officials who will focus on the messages going out in the United States, focusing, as we said earlier, on a few key Democratic senators that could be the ones that would vote against the president, even though it seems quite unlikely. The fact is that the President Obama will be presenting this as a personal issue. He is appealing to his party to say, "This is my legacy. This is my presidency. It's on my name." But that might be actually counter-effective, because when we're talking about so crucial issues like this, so crucial such as the stability, regional stability in the Middle East, arms race in the Middle East, some of the Democratic senators might be thinking, well, this isn't personal. This isn't about Obama's achievements. This is about world order. This is about global foreign policy.
It's about reshaping a region.
It's about reshaping a region. But Netanyahu is definitely going to put a lot of efforts. He also has a planned trip to Washington in September before the General Assembly. But of course, we have to see, from now on, it's a new period. It's a new era. And we have to see exactly how it will ravel out. definitely some people in Israel are saying this is not the time to confront the White House.
Right.
This is the time to try and renew cooperation. The White House has extended an open hand to Israel, offering a compensation package, with Israel up until this point has been refusing to talk about or even discuss. So the question is how Netanyahu will decide to handle himself in front of the American administration. Will it be another confrontation, or will it be an attempt to rapprochement? If you ask me, judging by history, Netanyahu will prevent the confrontation mode. Will prefer the confrontation.
Will prefer the
Yes.
confrontation mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, because I'm with you on that one. That will probably be the line. Ami Kaufman with us in studio as well. I want to take a look shortly at some of the headlines that are coming out from this morning when it comes to this imminent possible, or as Tal Shalev, I think you were the one who texted me yesterday, it's imminently imminent, that might be happening today.
Okay,
yes.
it might be happening. Let's see how the Iranian news agencies are talking about it. First of all, the Fars agency that we have, their headline is the source, no deadline for nuclear talks in Vienna. A source closer to negotiations underway between Iran and the six world powers reports that the deadline for the negotiations need to be extended after July 13th if the seven nations fail to strike a deal by midnight. However, IRNA, another Iranian news agency, says that there will be an announcement today by noon. So these are two different things from two different agencies.
Which has also been the part and parcel of these negotiations all along, that you're getting one bit of information, then contradicted. But yes, in that respect, they've been quite good.
I'm pretty hard-pressed to find some good op-eds. I mean, people that are for this deal. The web is full of op-eds that are against this deal. And you know what? The good op-eds that I did find that are for this deal are kind of boring. It's a historic agreement.
Right.
It's going to be good for America. It's going to be good for the world. Boring. I'm going to bring you some of the stuff that is anti, and some of these lines are really good.
Okay.
So, I mean, you're going to get the BB Award.
First of all, let's start with the Wall Street Journal. Let's start with Brett Stevens. The headline from the Wall Street Journal, Brett Stevens' op-ed, is the best arguments for an Iran deal, and he is being extremely sarcastic. And I'm being, easy on it. He says, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, a supposed reformer, spent last Friday saying death to America and death to Israel. If there's evidence of an Iranian trend toward moderation, it behooves proponents of a deal to show it. And I just want to end with this line because it is really, really strong. He says, maybe we'll get lucky again. Maybe Iran will change for the better after Mr. Khamenei passes from the scene. Or maybe we won't be lucky. Maybe there's no special providence for nations drunk on hope, led by fools. Very harsh words.
Drunk by hope, led by fools. And that would be
that Brett Stevens from the Wall Street Journal.
From the Wall Street Journal, but Wall Street Journal is also, a hawkishly, a hawkishly right-wing leaning magazine. Yes,
but you have to admit that the optics of the last 17 days don't look good for the administration. If we're talking about John Kerry on crutches and Mohammad Javad Zarif laughing on a balcony, it's clear that the administration has some PR damage control to conduct now. And this is part of the attack against these optics. These optics have been very crucial, and this is what has been seen all around the world and back in the United States.
No, entirely. And the other headlines that...
Another headline from the Jerusalem Post, veteran op-ed columnist Herb Keenan. He says, to use a boxing metaphor, 2 years ago, the world powers had Iran on the ropes. It's economically bad, limping, oil prices falling, its legitimacy at a low point. But instead of ratcheting up the sanctions and delivering a knockout blow, the powers let Iran slither off the ropes to come back and fight another round.
To come back and fight another round.
The headline, of course, took 3 decades, but in 10 years, Iran will be able to run, not sneak to an A-bomb.
No, sneak to an A-bomb, and also when you're looking at these headlines, when you're reading headlines as such, I personally this morning was trying to find exactly, as you said, something that would the optimist, something that would be supportive of this deal, because if all this has been going on for 17 days, somebody must be putting it out there.
By the way, now we're going to talk about another deadline, right? After the 60-day review by Congress, it's like there's another extension of this whole game.
Exactly, and this is the time, and I'm very, very glad that you managed to join us. Completely, Dr. Emily Landau of the INSS with us in studio on this, what seems to be a fateful morning. I'm sure that you specifically and the INSS are looking closely at Vienna. The sticking blocks that seem to remain are the arms embargo, but some reports, again, we do not know, of UN inspectors coming in. All of that does not add up to what is needed for a good deal, I'm sure you will say. Why?
For the same reasons, actually, that we've been discussing all along. The problems are the same problems. It's so ironic that now the sticking point is the arms embargo. Iran.
Why is it ironic?
Because Iran brought that on the table and put that on the agenda at the 11th hour before the July 10th deadline, because they knew that deadline was important to the United States because of congressional review. They suddenly put that on the table, and of course it became a sticking point. Why should there be a lifting of the arms embargo with all of what that means as far as ballistic missiles are concerned? But the Iranians, you know, it all comes back to the negotiations dynamic. And when you create a dynamic where Iran has room to do what it's doing, which is to try to squeeze the P5+1 at their weak points, then you will see the Iran squeeze the P5+1 at their weak points. And that's what's happening. So now suddenly the arms embargo is the sticking point. But of course, the other issues are still on the table. You know, I've read this morning there's some information coming out with regard to inspections and this idea of the managed access. So, and one of the problematic aspects that I've been talking about incessantly is this idea that there will be a committee to decide about Iran's violations, but Iran will be a member of the committee. That's a bad idea. Why? Because that means that you are opening the field for endless discussions, because you will present the violations. And let's say in the best case scenario, where the P5+1 or whoever's going to decide about those violations agrees that it's a significant violation, something needs to be done, they bring it to the table, and then they have to present it to the Iranians, and the Iranians will want time to consider it. And the Iranians might come back with their answer that they want the group to consider. And this can, I mean, we know how Iran operates. We have some experience with this. We know how they try to play for time and extend, you know, whatever process is going on, just like this negotiation has been going on since 2003. And therefore, you are undermining any ability to do effective verification, because they will be using that time to cover up whatever evidence was found and to make sure that when they finally allow, another thing on the agenda, I think I read that they will allow one visit to Parchin. Well, what do you think the Iranians have been doing since 2012 when the IAEA started trying to get access to Parchin? They're cleaning it up, they're covering it up, they're making sure that when the inspectors get there, they will likely find nothing. So they're allowing one visit to Parchin. I mean, these aspects of the verification regime, and that's just one issue where we see some information. These are not elements that can be considered a
bits and pieces of information, and you know, and I tend to agree, but to play devil's advocate, because people who are saying in historic moments in negotiations, things need to be done in order to move forward, and then there's the danger that if there is no deal at this point, sanctions are not going to work as such to stop Iran from trying to reach the bomb, so to speak, and then they'll get to it much faster.
No, well, sanctions, their role has always been to create leverage for the negotiation. So even if the Americans walked away now, it's not the end of negotiations. It doesn't mean that this is over. It's part of the process. If the Americans said, okay, we're going, that would be something that would actually make the Iranians quite upset. They wouldn't know how to even relate to that, because they're so used to the Americans never leaving the table. That's what the Americans have taught them in this negotiation. It would really shake things up. Now, it wouldn't be the end of the negotiations and then to depend on sanctions to stop them. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But sanctions would remain. Iran would remain pressured. They would still have the same interest to come back to the table and get a deal. They would come back to the table, I assure you. But the leverage of the P5+1 would have gone up. It's a hard bargain here. It's not a negotiation where there's a shared interest and they're moving towards, you know, something that's a win-win. It's not win-win. Either Iran will not be allowed to move to nuclear weapons, or it will. Iran wants to be able to. P5+1 want it not to be. It's a game of compellence. Only one side will come out winner. That's just the dynamic of this.
Dr. Landau of the INSS, I want to thank you profusely for being here this morning and shedding light on those specific points that we we always need to hear. Thank you for being with us this morning. As we mentioned, we are supposedly looking at a deal imminent in Vienna. Again, reports that something's coming out in the next several hours in terms of a statement. Stay with us. When we get back, another deal actually closed in Greece with the Eurozone. Stay with us. Welcome back. It is still Tuesday, July 14th, 2015. This is still the morning edition on I-24 News. Last I checked, I am still Yael Levi. Thank you for staying with us, as you should have. First of all, in the last several minutes, it is confirmed. There's a tweet that came out on Twitter from the European Union that an announcement is expected around 11:30 Vienna time when it comes to the Iranian and world powers negotiations. As we've been reporting over the course of this morning, a deal seems to be imminent in Vienna. Time will tell. We've been hearing that for 17 days. But supposedly later on today, 11:30 Vienna time, an announcement expected to come out of Austria when it comes to those faithful negotiations, and we will keep you updated. But speaking about negotiations and faithful ones, it is the time to move on to Greece. The government in Athens and its creditors have reached a deal that will shore up the country's place in the Eurozone after marathon overnight talks that took over 31 hours of acrimonious discussions spread over one tense weekend. A breakthrough came yesterday morning. The head of the European Council, Donald Tusk, announced that the 19 leaders of the Eurozone had unanimously reached an agreement in order to get these desperately needed funds. The radical left government of Alexis Tsipras in Greece had to submit to draconian economic reforms that the Greek people had rejected in a referendum barely a week ago. We are joined in studio by chairperson of the Israel-Greek Chamber of Commerce, Advocate Gila Lieber-Golan. Gila Golan, good morning, and thank you for being with us. And before we break it down, let's take a look at the latest from Greece.
17 hours of negotiations that ended with $96 billion and Greece remaining in the Eurozone. This is what the Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras secured for his country in a third European bailout deal, after rounds of marathon talks believed to be the longest Euro summit on record. It's no wonder Tsipras expressed relief on Monday.
We fought hard for 6 months, and until the end, we battled to get an agreement to get the country back on its feet. We were faced with a very difficult decision with hard dilemmas. We took the responsibility to decide in order to avert extreme plans by conservative circles in the European Union.
So how much cash does Greece need? Out of the total of the bailout package, Greece will receive an estimated €7 billion over the next month. But it's likely to be a crucial month of outgoing payments for the country as well. By July 14th, €100 million must be paid by the country on a Japanese samurai bond. And by July 20th, Greece will have to shell out another €450 million to the International Monetary Fund and €3.3 billion to the European Central Bank. But as European leaders welcomed the prospect of Greece remaining in the Eurozone, it became clear that today's victory is mainly a political win, more so than a financial one.
Our paper states at the top that trust has to be restored, that those responsible in Greece must take responsibility to implement everything we decided here.
Today was a long negotiation, but above all, a historic decision, because if Greece had left the Eurozone, what would have been said of the Greeks? That they were not able to take the responsibilities? What would have been said of France and Germany? The Eurozone would have gone backwards, whereas Europe needs to go forward.
Greek and European citizens were quick to pick up on the problematic meaning of the deal for Greece. And for those waiting in the now familiar lines outside banks in Athens today, the bailout deal was little cause for celebration.
As mentioned, we are joined in studio by the Israel-Greek Chamber of Commerce Advocate Gila Golan. Gila, you know what I'm confused about? What was the point of the referendum?
Well,
because doesn't it seem as if we just went around the ringer, and this deal, the bailout deal, and is basically not? Is it worse than what was before when it comes to the austerity?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
It is.
So.
It's no doubt about this. But as historian says these days, that this situation of referendum for one and coming to agreement two is something to be studied later on.
Right.
Because in case what we see is that Tsipras, Prime Minister, had no choice. Actually, he thought that by having the support of his people for 61%, he will achieve a better condition to bail out. But on the contrary happened.
Exactly.
On the contrary happened, and actually Merkel said it. She said it very clearly to him. And he came to really to an edge where he had no way to go but to agree. Right. He was really pushed to the corner. He was really pushed to a point where, I mean, either out, either in. And his people is really, I would say it in quotation mark, dying there. And I'm speaking with reporters, businessmen, friends. They are really walking in some situation where people, older people, cannot remember that has been in Greece for decades like this. So he has to save his country.
Right.
No
we're talking about the last 2.5 weeks of the last 2.5 weeks, where basically Greece is shut down. Greece is in a waiting, in a holding pattern. Gila, stay with us because we're joined on the phone right now by Stratos, of course. We're joined by Athens strategic communications consultant Stratos Afiolias, whom we've been speaking with over the course of the last several weeks. Stratos, you know, as I said to Gila Gulan here of the Israeli-Greek Chamber of Commerce, we are confused. What was the point of the referendum? What is the reaction this morning in Greece? Because thank God the negotiations between the EU and Greece are over. But that said, the draconian conditions seem to be worse than what was actually demanded to begin with from Greece.
I think by now it's quite clear that Mr. Tsipras has cornered himself with this referendum. He came up with a response to a set of measures that didn't exist over a plan that didn't make sense. So now he will have to come back in Greece and interpret the new decision that he has made in Brussels. But I will tell you this as a Greek citizen. I recognize that mistake back then, but it could have been followed by even a bigger mistake. And the bigger mistake would have been an exit, a Grexit. A Grexit is not a small thing. A Grexit impacts the country forever. Those that tried to solve the idea of a temporary Grexit was a bait. It was a huge risk. Greece couldn't go out for 5 years and then come back. So that was what I keep from all this discussion, is that we're still here in the Eurozone. It's bad, it's hard, it's going to be difficult, but at least we're alive. That's all it matters.
And that's all that matters. Indeed, Stratos, to just, you know, valid points coming from Greece. That said, Gila, do you think Tsipras can survive this politically within Greece? Because, you know, if you and I are discussing the fact that really nothing was achieved for the people of that country when it comes to a better deal with the EU, can he politically survive this within his own country?
Listen, he has to go back now, and this deal has to be approved by the parliament, by his own parliament. And before he went, he got the support of the parliament with 300 members of the parliament, which he got 251 members for, and the rest was against. But what is said about it, the coalition and his people from his own coalition and Syriza party was against it. And now he has to cross this bridge with this
with
people.
This deal. Yeah.
Yes, with this deal, because still, as Varoufakis, the Prime Minister who has resigned, is still against it, and some other people. So he has really, without the approval of the Parliament of the Greek, it will not be done. And plus, other country has to approve this deal. But what has been really achieved, and let's look, and I always want to look on the bright side. The bright side is that after all this really terrible time they went through, a trust became between all these people again. It's not on the table anymore that Greece is leaving the Eurozone. It's not anymore. It's not an option that nobody speaks. And now the Eurogroup is going to make a decision that even before it should be approved by the parliament, that should be tomorrow, which is a very, very short deadline, they might give some money to Greece for the banks to be opened. And I think that when the banks will be open and money will come in and people will feel that they are not really choked by the situation, maybe some kind of relief will be. And maybe, if we can look at it, as much as these austerities are really terrible, people are asking me, would it bring Greece to be having a new economic stability? Right. And I think maybe, even now, it's going to be really, really difficult. Maybe something good will come out of it. Even it's really, really difficult. No doubt about it.
No doubt. And I think, as Stratos said to us on the phone, that the other option of a Grexit was even worse. And maybe a lot of Greek people understand that. Gila and Ami, before we continue, I just want to say that there are several reports coming out now from Reuters. I'm going to source this report, saying that an Iranian official, an Iranian diplomat, no names mentioned, has said that a deal has been reached in Vienna, and it's a historic deal, that they've reached a historic deal. Once again, this is one source, an unnamed diplomat, or an unnamed Iranian diplomat thus far, coming out of Reuters, that's a news agency, saying that a historic deal has been reached in Vienna. Of course, we are waiting for that 11:30 time mentioned by the European Union, where an announcement will come out of the Austrian capital. But leading up to that, that is what is being reported right now, all eyes on Vienna. Going back, though, Gila, I want to thank you, because Greece has been concluded when it comes to negotiations. Maybe Mohammed Jawad Zarif can now move to Athens. But thank you for being with us, Stratos, as well. You are staying in studio. Ami, lighten this up for the viral spiral that is the web review.
Yes, after something totally different.
If indeed there is a deal that we will know in the next several minutes or hours or possibly days. Yes.
Okay. This is off to Grand Rapids, Minnesota. Did you know that Dorothy's shoes from The Wizard of Oz are actually missing? They were stolen.
I'm devastated.
They were stolen 10 years ago.
The red shoes, Gila.
The red shoes. And now someone is offering $1 million. An anonymous donor is offering.
When were they stolen?
They were actually stolen in 2005, in April 2005, from a small museum in Grand Rapids, Minnesota.
I'm almost upset somebody beat me to it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, the owner of the shoes gave it. He donated these shoes to the museum.
Right.
And he said, and the museum said, you know, we want to put them in a safe every night. And he said, no, I will not let you do that, because I am the only one who can touch them.
Right, and not anymore.
Not anymore. Nobody's going to touch them. But that was 10 years ago. Now someone is coming out and says, I'll give you $1 million if you tell me where those shoes are.
There's no place like home. Yep, and
a viral video that is going crazy. Okay, this is a guy who was at an amusement park with his family, and he takes a video of his wife and kid on this thing that's going to hurl them in the air, and he kind of prods them and says, hey, you know, those ropes are looking a little frayed. You might want to be a little careful, kind of joking with them. Let's see what happens in the video.
Please, let's take a look.
D-Man, drop a beat. Holy shit. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Didn't do it. Good thing it didn't rain on that. Holy ball. It broke.
It didn't break the base.
It broke.
Some sort of prophet, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened. Jeez.
And
Serena won the Wimbledon championship on
I saw that. Unbelievable. No, I love this woman.
As usual, there are a lot of people on Twitter who say, you know, crazy things, racist things, sexist things about her. J.K. Rowling came out in her defense, because what she said, I love her, what an athlete, what a role model, what a woman. But we have a tweet and how from one of these trolls. Let's show this tweet about what one guy said. He answered her, he says, it's ironic then that main reason for her success is that she is built like a man. And if you can show the pictures of the tweet.
Yeah, but
she says,
sadly we don't have that picture.
Yeah, she's built like a man, yeah. My husband looks just like this in a dress, you're an idiot. And we can see the picture.
And we cannot see the picture.
She looks gorgeous. She's amazing. She looks fantastic.
Okay, and moving along.
We have time for another video, I hope.
I hope so.
This is a cuteness alert. Look at this kid.
Please.
Her mother is Jessica Sinclair. She had to put glasses on her baby, who was named Biper. Piper, excuse me, Piper, and this is what happened when she put the glasses on for the first time. Let's take a look at this video.
Okay, video coming up.
Hi. Hi, Piper. How are you? Hi, can you see? Can you see? Yeah. Hi, honey.
Piper, hi.
Hi, honey. Can you see?
I think she can.
Hi, babe.
Hi.
You look so cute.
Hey.
I love it. We can see.
Cute.
Unbelievable. Sadly, all the time we have. Gila, I want to thank you for being with us. Ami, thank you for, as always, being here. We will be back shortly. Stay with us. I-24 News with some breaking news. As we have mentioned, an imminent, or as has been reported over the course of the last several hours, that imminent deal expected in Vienna. Now, according to several news outlets, one of them, of course, being also news agencies such as Reuters, an Iranian diplomat has been quoted out of Vienna saying that a deal has been reached and it is historic. And that's what we're hearing right this moment. Once again, we want to be careful with this because there's been no specific announcement. Nobody's standing there on a balcony, but several news outlets reporting that Iranian delegates or an Iranian diplomat out of Vienna saying that a deal has been reached between the P5+1 world powers and Iran to curb Iran's nuclear aspirations in return for sanctions relief. With me in studio, Tal Shalev. If indeed this has happened, this spells a completely new Middle East. But all we know right now that officially we are expecting several other things today. What are we expecting coming out of Vienna?
Well, first of all, in about an hour's, 2 hours' time, the P5+1 and the Iranian delegation will be meeting for their last plenary meeting, the final concluding meeting of these 17 days of negotiations. And after that, a press conference is expected. It's not clear yet who will be speaking. If it'll be, it probably will be Zarif and Mogherini. And later on today, when the White House wakes up, when Washington wakes up in the morning, we will probably have similar statements, both in Washington and in Tehran, by President Obama and President Rouhani, both of them speaking to their own respective nations.
To their own respective nations. Joining us on the phone now is I-24 News correspondent Eli Hochenberg, who has been in Vienna for the bulk and the course of these very tense negotiations. Eli, as we've been mentioning, several reports coming out right now in several outlets saying that a deal supposedly has been reached, according to an Iranian diplomat, and it's historic. What are you hearing on the ground in Vienna?
It's more than that, Yael. We received an official invitation by the Austrian Foreign Ministry to the press conference. All the teams here are packing their equipment and heading towards the venue where the announcement will take place. It is expected to take at least 2 hours from now, if not a bit more. But that's it. It's official. There is an agreement, and soon we will hear the official announcement. But as for now, again, all the logistics teams and the journalists here are packing their equipment and heading towards the venue of the announcement, and this is it. Everything is clear now. We have a deal, and it will be announced on in the upcoming hours.
Eli, do stay with us when you say it is official, and you're standing here describing an incredibly dramatic scene. Everybody moving to a location where supposedly this announcement is made. Is there any information to be gleaned on what supposedly was the last sticking point? What has been reached, and you know, what are we looking at?
Well, the last problematic issue was the UN arms embargo, and the reason it became such a crucial topic in recent days is because of simple misunderstanding. When talking about lifting sanctions for the Iranian side, it was clear that the UN arms embargo imposed back in 2006 will be a part of such lifting. But for the Western negotiators, it was not a part of the deal. So this is why it has been taking them so long to finalize this issue. But from what we understand, they have reached understandings on this topic as well, because of the simple fact that we are expected to see an agreement being announced on soon. So this was the latest issue they have been dealing with, alongside, of course, the hectic, intense reviewing of this long, elaborated agreement.
That we will be seeing later on, supposedly, as we said, in the next 2 hours. Yes, Tal Shalev.
I just want to say that the problems, as we heard earlier this morning, the problems in this deal will be the same problems that were in the Lausanne framework and will be the same sticking point. So when the opposition to the deal will be looking to expose the flaws in the deal, they will be looking exactly to these sticking points. The sticking points of the UN Security Council resolution, when it will be lifted, how it will be lifted, what will be the timing of it, and what will be the exact phrasing of it, as well as the arms embargo, as well as the verification methods. All of these sticking points that weren't settled in the Lausanne framework, these have been the sticking points in this round of negotiations. And the question is just exactly how did the sides legally disguise these problems in the deal? The problems will probably still be there after the deal, but the question is how will each side succeed to legally phrase these agreements, these clauses in the deal? And the mission of the opposition or the objection to the deal will be to expose these flaws and to expose that actually there hasn't been any substantial agreement on these issues. So this will be the mission, and we've been saying this all along. The president. The key to the President Obama succeeding to pass this deal through Congress is how close it is to the Lausanne framework. If opposition to the deal succeeds to show that this has been the comprehensive agreement moves too far away from the Lausanne framework or leaves too many open loopholes, then the president will be having a problem. And it's clear that the Israeli government has declared war on this deal and will continue to lobby against the deal in the upcoming 2 months. So in many ways, up until now, Netanyahu has been on the sidelines of this process. Now he's going to take a lead role.
This is when the battle will begin, or as we said earlier on the show, once the deal is signed, which seems to be happening in the next several hours, as being reported right now, almost all news outlets, as reporters are being moved in Vienna from outside the grounds into a room where a press conference will be held in the next hour. This deal is imminent, and the game begins, so to speak. It's not the end of things, it's where it begins. I want to go on the phone right now to Eran Zinger, Arab Affairs correspondent for Reshet Bet. Eran, good morning to you. Apparently, hello. Apparently, this is happening. I'm assuming there's still no reaction from the Arab world around or from the press, but this is where the story, many will say, starts and kicks off again. And what are we expecting to see from the Gulf nations and from the Arab states surrounding Iran in this issue?
Well, before discussing the Arab reply or the Arab comments, or what the Arabs are going to do, especially the Saudis, regarding this deal, it is very important to see who was the first to leak the information or to leak the report that an agreement has been achieved. It was an Iranian official. It didn't come from the other side. In other words, this is the Iranian way to announce that this is their victory. This is a victory made by Tehran and not by the West. That's a very important piece of information. The Arabs are still very quiet. They're not saying anything regarding the latest developments. It will be decided, I think, in the next few hours or days what will be the official response of the Saudis and especially the other Gulf states regarding this very crucial development, this deal between Iran and the West, because too many questions hasn't been answered yet. The removal of the sanctions, when will it take place? Will it be as soon as the agreement
as the deal
is
signed? Right.
Another crucial question regarding the visits of the UN inspectors in the nuclear sites. How long will the world have to call the Iranian officials before the visit in order to make them know that they're on their way? These are very important questions that hasn't been answered publicly yet, and I think that in an hour or so we'll be clever.
And I think the fascinating and extraordinary moment, Eran Zinger, as you've mentioned, rightfully so, is the news breaks first with all of us in the Western media quoting an Iranian diplomat saying that the historic deal has been reached. And what a change of times, a sign of the times, if indeed that is the case, that this is what is happening right now. Several reports coming also from Israeli media, a flash from a left-leaning Haaretz newspaper saying that a deal has been reached. But once again, nothing has come out officially. It's important to mention, rather than reporters are being moved into a specific room in Vienna as we are speaking right now. Eran Zinger, I want to thank you for being with us on the phone as we follow this breaking news. But before we continue, these negotiations, Tal Shalev, as you mentioned, have been going on for not just the last 17 days, but for almost 3 years. And let's see what played out over the course of the last several years, so to speak, to reach this, what people are calling a historic moment of a possible announcement in 2 hours. These were the negotiations that were. Let's have a look.
I have consistently stated that I'm hopeful that we can convince the Iranian regime to give up any ambitions it has in developing a weapons program and do so peacefully.
All of us were pleased that Foreign Minister Zarif came and made a presentation to us which was very different in tone and very different in the vision that he held out with respect to the possibilities of the future.
We have done significant work. We have made achievements. We have made progress. We have decided to take steps.
The negotiations that were, and I want to say, you know, the highlight, Tal Shalev still with me in studio, obviously, the highlight, or I think the hero of these talks, the man emerging, the balcony man, is Mohammad Jawad Zarif.
Well, definitely, Mohammad Jawad Zarif has made an amazing transformation to the Iranian diplomacy in the past 3 years. But the chief negotiators here, both Zarif and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, basically the architects of this deal, definitely played a role. On the one hand, we do see Zarif with his so-called charm diplomacy, and really, we cannot argue with a lot of charm and a lot of wit and a lot of charisma. And on the other hand,
almost a westernized charisma in many, many ways.
And on the other, and this is the face actually that the West needed in order to negotiate with Iran. On the other hand, we see John Kerry very eager at this point to reach a deal. And the optics, we talked about the optics of the past few days with Kerry on crutches and Zarif smiling on the balcony. But Kerry definitely has put a lot into these talks, into this process. And in recent days, the U.S. media has been speculating that despite the fact, the common notion that that assumes that the president needs this deal, one of the assumptions coming up in U.S. media is that actually Kerry needs this deal much more than Obama needs this deal, because Obama secured his domestic policy, his domestic legacy. He also has the Cuba deal on his foreign policy
gay marriages, health care. Yeah.
But Kerry didn't succeed up until this point to really bring back any significant achievement under his tenure as Secretary of State. And from Kerry's point of view, this day is definitely a celebration, even though he will be slammed very hard by the hardliners back home.
And speaking of the media, Ami Kaufman, I'm glad you're sitting with me here, because you spent the morning, Ami, actually trying to look for anything supportive in Western, optimistic about this deal.
It was very hard pressed to find any. Most of them were just very either sarcastic, very negative about this deal.
And not just in mainstream. I mean, we know it's the Wall Street Journal that was
was right wing, yeah. But even in places like the HuffPost and other places, it was just really hard to find very supportive things, statements about this.
Statements about this.
Everybody is very cautious, very
in the United States itself, and you know, we're joined on the phone now by Rebecca Shimoni-Storla, a Times of Israel correspondent in Washington D.C. Good night, good evening. To you, Rebecca.
Good morning.
Good morning. Exactly. Thank you for being with us. As we said, it's very it's clear that the announcement about a deal supposedly is about to happen in the next 2 hours coming out of Vienna. News has been broken across the board in outlets, but it's an Iranian diplomat that actually was first quoted on the air of many outlets saying that a deal has been reached. Reaction thus far in the United States, does this seem to be happening? And how hard is it to sell also to the American public? As we were saying here, it's hard for us, we're pressed to find any type of reportage, even in the States, that supports this deal.
Well, first of all, I'll answer by saying it is, of course, very early in the morning in America, and so no sort of organizational or official announcement, by and large, has come out. Also because when everybody went to sleep this evening, it was a bit of the boy who cried wolf. You know, the people over here have been going to sleep a couple nights now with the belief that they were going to wake up in the morning with a deal, and waking up in the morning and find that no, there was another deadline.
Deal, exactly.
But that said, I think that what Ami said is particularly important because in the last week there have been multiple reports of various, I wouldn't say U.S. collapses because we don't know what the text of the deal says, but certainly there have been indications that there has been much more flexibility on issues that the U.S. public was reasonably sure were not actually being negotiated, such as on conventional weapons. Now there's a report that perhaps there's going to be a resolution in the United Nations Security Council before Congress gets to vote the deal up and down. And so those kind of leaks, whether or not they're accurate, do give a certain sense within, you know, even the mainstream media in America that perhaps this deal isn't quite shaping up the way that it was originally cast.
Yeah, the way it was originally cast, and we're looking at, you know, all these scenarios that were discussed here. When it comes to the American President Obama himself, as Tal Shalev mentioned, it seems it has been the feeling, you and I, Rebecca, have said it all along, that it's so important for that administration to bring that deal into fruition. At home, of course he can veto things, but how hard is the battle at home once it's back from those tables of negotiation in Vienna, in, you know, up on the Hill? How hard is it going to be there?
Well, even if we more or less assume that the end game will be a presidential veto if any attempt is made to vote disapproval on the deal, the fact of the matter is that it can be a very ugly and damaging 60 days of rhetoric between now and then. And I think that today it was particularly indicative that Ted Cruz spoke in a pre-recorded message at a convention of pro-Israel Christians. And one of the points that he made was he kept tying the current Obama administration's policy, not just, he dropped three names repeatedly. He kept tying the current policy to Barack Obama, to John Kerry, and to Hillary Clinton. And he repeated that series of names over and over again. And I think that when we look down the line of what this 60 days, what this impact will have, and who's really concerned about how it's going to play out, my feeling is that in the end, Obama can exercise a veto over whatever Congress throws at him. But the sort of foreign policy narrative that is shaped during those 60 days and the kind of rhetoric and perhaps even vitriol that's heard can be damaging more so in the long run.
More so in the long run. Yeah, Rebecca, thank you for being with us. Hopefully we can still hear on. Yes, Tal Shalev, hold on for 1 second. One update that you were seeing?
No, I'm just seeing the one update that we were talking about, will they let inspectors onto the sites or not? And AP is saying that the Iranian state television is rejecting the suggestion that military site inspections will be included in a final nuclear deal between the Islamic Republic and world powers. So
I just say that everything that comes out from now until the next, until we hear about the deal exactly, should be taken with some reservation. At this point, they're trying. Everyone is trying to sell the deal, but at least until we hear exactly what they have to say. But on that respect, I think it's interesting to notice what happened in the past few days inside the P5+1. I've been talking about it for a while. I think that the Cold War actually finally reached the P5+1 after months that the P5+1 have been working in outstanding cooperation, despite the fact that we have the Ukraine front going on and Russia and the U.S. At loggerheads over the Crimea and the Ukraine. In the past few days, we do see a new front. we do see Russia and China backing Iran on their last-minute demands, specifically on the arms embargo, and the U.S. standing in front, standing on the other side. And I think in many ways it's not only about how the U.S. at the end of the day succumbed to the Iranian pressure. This is also about global politics. This is also about much bigger power. At the end of the day, if we do see, we don't know, of course, the details of the deal, but if we do see like a concession on the arms embargo issue, it is safe to say that the Russians succeeded to bend the Americans' hand in this round, in these negotiations.
There's a financial reason for that, because they're going to make a lot of money from it. China and Russia have a lot of deals about making the Iranian army supplying them with a lot of weapons. The important thing about this deal, we have been talking implications, whatnot, over the course of the last several months. At the end of the day, a lot of money is involved there. A lot of money that Europe, that many outlets in the world are waiting for. With us on the phone right now is Amir Oren, Haaretz senior defense analyst. Amir, I want to ask you, because we've all been speaking about the day after, the next phase of the Middle East. Are we looking, if this deal is on the table, and we don't know its details, a proliferation of nuclear arms? What's the next step for the Middle East?
Well, there will not be any proliferation of nuclear arms. This is the whole point of the deal for the next 10 or 15 years.
And that's the whole thing, that analysts are warning that Saudi Arabia is going to try and do that, that Israel is going to look at that. But looking at this deal, that's the details that we don't know yet at the end of the day. Yes,
Israel, of course, has not waited for Iran in order to introduce certain strategic weapons into the Middle East. And Saudi Arabia is actually saying this is all well and good. There will be inspections, there will be verification mechanisms, but just to be on the safe side, if it turns out that Iran is violating the agreement, then we will counter-proliferate. But if you look at the broader picture, it is indeed a watershed for the Middle East, because if Iran can be pushed over from the extreme hardline corner to a centrist position, and there is a regional alliance which is shifting, then it will be better for all the regions. And also, when President Obama talks about the military option, he knows full well that the American people, as distinct from some congressional Republicans, the American people is not with him. The American people is not going to support an invasion, a ground involvement in Asia. They hardly recuperated from Afghanistan and Iraq. And the only time Iran capitulated to military pressure was when Iraq was invaded 12 years ago. This is not going to happen again. And so Obama's cards, when he played these negotiations, were very poor to begin with, and he played them moderately well.
And I played him entirely well. Entirely well. If one is looking from the outside, Amir Oren, I want to thank you for being with us this morning. As we said, reports in several news outlets quoting an Iranian diplomat out of Vienna saying that a deal, a historic deal, has been reached. That is according to Reuters. But as we've been hearing from our correspondents, reporters in Vienna, that people have been moved, the press has been moved into a room where they're expecting an announcement coming out of the Austrian capital when it comes to these very, very faithful talks in Vienna in about 2 hours. But Tal Shalev, looking at these antics and at this legacy that everybody's been saying Obama is expecting, there's this notion that this deal was pushed come high or hell, come hell or high water in many ways on the American administration.
Well, the notion in Israel, and this is not just a political notion coming from Netanyahu. This comes from diplomatic officials, security officials from all sides of the political spectrum, is that the U.S. didn't really know how to negotiate here. That is the main claim towards the U.S. The main claim towards the administration is that the U.S. succumbed to the Iranian pressure, that they let the Iranians have room to maneuver maneuver until the last minute, and we see this again and again throughout all the rounds of intensive negotiations. This has been basically the claim against the Lausanne Framework Agreement. After the Lausanne Framework Agreement, the Israelis said, Jerusalem said that the Americans should have pushed harder, that this was the time to ratchet up more sanctions, and that actually the combination between sanctions and the credible military threat, that's something else we should mention, that is what brought the Iranians to the table. And one of the things that comes up in Israel is the fact that the president, over time, actually eroded his own credible military threat.
Red lines that were sketched in the sand and constantly pushed back.
Exactly, and while in the past the president used to say all options are on the table, in recent interviews he's been given, he's been explaining that the military option won't really push back the Iranian nuclear program. Right. And this is one of the problems. If we see negotiations as something very, primitive, something that really has to do just with balance of power and with power games, that the fact is that the Iranians did know how to maximize their gains, while the Americans didn't really keep, at least from what it sees, the view in Jerusalem is that the Americans didn't really keep up their very tough stand in these negotiations, and that led to a spiral of concessions that brings us where we are today.
To where we are today, but it is important to mention again that whatever is announced today, we do not know the details of this deal.
And it's also important to say that many people have a predetermined position about
the deal in advance. So, as we said, supposedly a deal reached, but I think it is striking to mention that, the initial bit of news has been mentioned, has been quoting an Iranian diplomat rather than an American one, almost in this superpowerish kind of battle where it feels as if, at least to us in the press, that they're winning.
There is a report from the Associated Press that a senior Western diplomat also says that an agreement has been reached. So I just want to say that.
So there's also a senior Western diplomat. Yeah. With us also from London, Jonathan Sachadati, I-24 News European correspondent. Jonathan, I don't know the reactions right now. There's a flurry of information coming once again. We have not seen the deal supposedly coming. An announcement is coming in 2 hours. What is the reaction in Europe? And at the end of the day, there's a lot of money involved that Europe is waiting to funnel in and out of Iran. Isn't that the case?
Absolutely the case. And until really this morning, Europe and UK in particular have been rather ignoring these negotiations going on in Vienna. It's been something of a sideshow to what's been happening with Europe and Greece. Right. But of course, with this news breaking now, the focus is shifting to what could be a world-changing agreement. And as we hear now, we've got this Iranian diplomat suggesting that there is now a deal that has been struck, and then also an unnamed Western diplomat, as you just said there, according to the Associated Press. So we're hearing these little leaks. People have been up all night following the news, a bit like an expectant father in a maternity ward, every moment thinking something was about to arrive, but then discovering that it wasn't. However, the rumors now seem clear that it should be happening some point this morning. Again, the announcements are likely to be wrapped up, I'm hearing this morning, as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is keen to leave Vienna before noon. That doesn't necessarily mean it will take place before then, but with journalists being moved into a briefing room for a press conference, everything I'm hearing coming out of there is that this is imminent and that there is some sort of deal. What it is will remain to be seen.
Will remain to be seen. Jonathan, thank you very much for that update. And Tal Shalev, as you said, we're expecting that in 2.5 hours we're not going to see a signing, rather than what?
There will probably be just an announcement of an agreement, according to reports coming in from Iranian journalists. The deal itself will be signed after a new UN Security Council resolution is adopted, and that could take a few months. So definitely we will have celebrations today, but the deal actually will be signed and implemented only later on. We've been hearing about this in the past few days, that this is going to be a three-stage deal. So we still have to understand the details, but it's clear that the Iranian people will not be feeling tomorrow quick economic relief, and this might be one of the challenges of President Rouhani and Mohammad Javad Zarif. Many of the people in Iran are just waiting, anticipating to have some kind of economic relief. That may take a few more months.
A few more months, and as we said, we do not have the details, but 2 hours from now, so it seems, or several hours from now, 11:30 Vienna time, we are expecting an announcement coming out of the Austrian capital. Several news outlets reporting Iranian diplomats saying a deal has been reached between the P5+1 and Iran. If so, a historic moment. I-24 News will be on it. Stay with us.